Welcome back to the channel. Today we are working on the taco, Ryan's taco, if you remember from the last couple of videos. We're diagnosing some sort of a leak. We're not sure if it's water or oil. My sneaking hunch is that it's oil coming from the valve cover gaskets. Whether or not it's leaking from the head, which I doubt it is because it hasn't been losing much coolant. That's what's on the list for today. So we're going to start by getting all this off. If you remember, this truck has 393,000 miles. Of course, this is the legendary 5UZ FE, the 3.4 liter dual overhead cam V6. It's still running strong. It seems to have really good compression. Yeah, we'll go ahead and start unbolting things here. Almost forgot before I get a little too ahead of myself, always remove the negative terminal for the battery. There's a lot of plumbing here on the throttle body. So there's the throttle position sensor. There is a, I think, idle air control. I'm not sure what that is. And then there's one beneath it. You've got two PCV breathers. I believe one here is coming from the other head. And then there's one here that connected in the back, or I'm sorry, right here. So we're just disconnecting that here. There's two coolant hoses right here that we disconnected, and I just kind of angled those up for right now. So now there's these four 12mm nuts. Well, there's two bolts and two nuts that we're gonna take off. There it is. I'm gonna go ahead and just start removing the plenum on this side just so I have that off and I have more access to everything. But there's a couple, I'm not sure if they're like T28 or I don't know the exact number, but they're Torx bits. There's two of them here. So we had a nut here, two of the Torx nuts here, one nut in the back, and then two studs on this side. And then once those are off, we're able to take the upper plenum off. So on this side, there's four 10mm bolts that you're gonna need to take out. One is holding this ground strap into the plenum right here. And then there's one here, which is holding the fuel return line, this right here, bracket onto the plenum. Don't undo this clamp here because that's your fuel, this one right here is your fuel return line. So don't unclamp that or you'll have fuel everywhere. And then it's gonna be hard to see, but there's another one of this same bracket going into the plenum that's another 10mm bolt. This vacuum line's gotta be disconnected from here. We already disconnected the brake booster. So there's a plastic harness that's connected into the plenum back here, which is another 10mm bolt. Okay, and for our lower plenum, there is one nut down here, one stud here, one nut on the back side here. So that's three on this side. And then there was the two Torx right here. And then this lower plenum is free, I believe. One thing that you want to be really, really cautious of now that we're going to take this off is that these 6 runners are going straight into the cylinder heads here. So I want to make sure that I don't have anything that could potentially fall into the engine from here. So if you're by yourself, just be very careful. Look what you're doing. Make sure nothing's binding and nothing's going to, like, you know, break off and fall into there. As soon as that's off, we're going to go ahead and shove some paper towels down into each cylinder, because if you don't, then you risk doing what I did with the Land Cruiser, which was I had an alignment dowel from my intake plenum fall into the head, and I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. And I kept having a misfire on one cylinder. I noticed the valve wasn't closing. I had to take the whole head back off and use a valve spring compressor just to get that out, that little dowel pin out of the head. So make sure that you have some paper towels to put in these cylinders once it's off. But I'm going to very carefully take this off now. We're just going to be reusing these gaskets that were on here. So they probably should be replaced, but they look pretty good. They're dual layer, or yeah, maybe triple layer. No, they're dual layer, so they're good enough. Actually, these aren't crushed gaskets, so they can be reused. I lied, we actually don't have to take the injectors off, or the injector rail off rather, but we have to unbolt them from the valve cover on either side. Something I'm noticing though, and the previous owner did say that she had replaced a few of the coil packs, because as I'm looking, these look like NGK coils. I mean, these are obviously NGK wires, but these are original Toyota coil packs themselves, and these look like just regular NGK ones. So maybe you guys can tell me in the comments below if that's regular. I don't think it is on this, but nonetheless, these have to be unbolted. These are just 3 10mm fasteners that hold these into there. We're going to take those out, take the spark plugs out, and then we'll have better access to all the valve cover fasteners. All right, so we've got our 8 fasteners off of our passenger side valve cover off. I'm going to use a brass hammer and just kind of nudge it to the side to kind of free it up. I could use a dead blow hammer as well. A couple of these, I tried to use my seal puller for the spark plug grommets, but the inner part just broke out because these are so corroded. They're just plastic and brittle now. So I'm just taking a screwdriver just to get under it, just enough, and being really careful not to score the aluminum here, just enough to get it up. And then I'll come back with my seal puller. And I'm actually not pushing up against the aluminum there, I'm pushing all on that rubber. Yeah, you don't want to score the aluminum because then you'll have that mating surface will have a sealing issue. Wedge them out of there using that same technique. Yeah, see, it's doing the same thing. So I'll come back in with this little screwdriver, just trying to get it to go a teeny bit. At this point, you could just get new valve covers and call it a day, but we're going to try and reuse these. All right. So we'll take the old gaskets out as well, obviously, because we're going to be doing full new gasket set for this. If you come over here, I'll show you what's included in the kit. Well, it's not really a kit, it's just what we pieced together from a auto parts store. Obviously the Fel Pro gasket, those same spark plug tube grommets, and then we have a full set of the fastener grommets as well. These guys right here, because those were all pretty brittle as well, and some of them are still caked on the valve cover itself, as you can see. So we'll go ahead and pry those off, again being careful not to add or not to score the aluminum too much because this is a softer material. Be a good time if you had like a brass pick or something to use that, but I don't, so we'll be fine. So he's just using some gasoline again to go through there and get all the big kind of gunk out. We're not doing like a perfect job on it, just don't want that excess gunk going in the engine. So he'll finish up with this one. I'm gonna go ahead and clean the mating surface where the valve cover gasket will sit on that block, make sure that's all cleaned up. Both the valve covers off. I cheated and left the harness and all the wiring still in the way, but I was able to remove this engine bracket here, which connects the upper plenum to the block on the lower side there. So I just removed that, and that gave me enough clearance to get that whole side off. This side's off as well. So Ryan's just over here using a brush to get everything cleaned off. Again, this is our free parts wash, well, $3 parts washer. Right here, this little piece right here. It's a little half moon that'll go in between the block or the head and the valve cover. So we just put some RTV on those and put them back in their hole to seal it up. All right, so Ryan's finished up one of the valve covers. We've got it about as clean we care to get it, basically. PCV valve is good. It's not blocked or anything. We wouldn't check that. And yeah, it's as cleaned up as it's gonna get. A little trick I learned on my last valve cover gasket is to use this Permatex. This is just gonna go in between where the gasket goes into the valve cover channel, and it helps it stick in there so that when you apply it, it doesn't fall out, and it's really helpful in all situations, really, because I mean, you're going to be, especially because I'm trying to cheat and not take out all the extra wiring loom and all that extra stuff, so there's going to be stuff in the way, and that can really make it difficult to get it on there straight. All right, so while we're waiting for that to dry onto there, we're gonna go ahead and install the spark plug grommets. All right, so I've grabbed a 32mm socket that I'm gonna press these in with. All right, so those are all flush and pushed in now. So we'll get started on the second one. I also let all the studs, the valve cover fasteners, soak in gasoline and get all kind of the grime off of there. They're not perfect, but I installed the new valve cover grommet seals as well. So we've got all the valve cover fasteners just hand tight, and then the order we're gonna do is this one back here as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We got everything put back together, or so we think. So I may or may not have forgotten to plug the entire fuel injection harness on cylinders 2, 4, and 6. Maybe. And I might have taken this all back apart and put it back together, but you wouldn't know, would you? So that didn't happen. It didn't happen. We'll go ahead and start it up and give it another shot. She is all back together, despite that little mishap with the fuel injection harness. And yeah, she's running under her own steam, no leaks. And if you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a like and a subscribe. And until next time, I will see you on the trails.